Welcome to Revenge Stories. It was 7:15 a.m. in Nashville when I opened the email that shattered my world. My 1-year-old daughter, Emma, was babbling happily in her high chair, smashing tiny fists into her banana slices, completely oblivious to the way my hands had gone ice cold around my coffee mug. My heart pounded, the rush of adrenaline making the edges of my vision blur. Moving on. That was the subject line. A casual, almost cheerful dismissal of 5 years of marriage, of promises whispered in the dark, of sacrifices I'd made for a man who had just erased me in 2 words. I hesitated before clicking the attachment. A photo loaded, crisp and clear. Donald, my husband, standing in front of our lake house, arms possessively wrapped around a young blonde who barely looked old enough to order a drink. The same house where we had spent long weekends planning our future. The home I had paid for. My stomach clenched. I could still smell the wood polish from the last time I'd been there, could still feel the warmth of the summer sun reflecting off the dock. That house was supposed to be our retreat, our safe place. And now, it was his? No. No, I didn't think so. I forced my trembling fingers to scroll down. The house is mine now. I've already moved in with Amber. My lawyer will be sending over the divorce papers. Don't bother fighting it. The deed is in my name. The coffee mug slipped from my grasp, landing with a dull thud on the wooden table. Not from shock, not from heartbreak. No. The emotion that spread through my chest like wildfire was something far darker, far colder. Rage. Donald thought he could just steal my home and discard me with an email. He thought I was weak, that I'd cry, maybe beg him to reconsider. But Donald had forgotten one very important thing about me. I don't lose. My phone lay next to my laptop, his number glowing on the screen. My finger hovered over it for half a second before I hit block. Then, I opened my email and typed 2 simple sentences. Are you sure about that? Better check the paperwork carefully. I hit send. Then, I blocked his email too. Emma giggled at something on the TV, blissfully unaware of the fact that her father had just detonated our lives with his arrogance. I took a deep breath, grounding myself. I had a company to run, an empire I had built from nothing but sleepless nights and sheer force of will. While Donald had played the role of corporate big shot, convincing himself his career made him the powerhouse in our marriage, I had been quietly growing something far more powerful. My own wealth, my own independence. And he had no idea. I should have seen this coming. The signs had been there: his sudden need for solo business trips to the lake house, the late-night phone calls and hushed tones, the dismissive way he'd brushed off my concerns. He had been laying the groundwork for months, stealing away little pieces of our life together while I had been too busy juggling my growing business and raising our daughter. The lake house had been my idea, my investment. I had covered every expense, but Donald had insisted his name be put on the deed for tax purposes. I let out a slow breath and walked to my office, Emma on my hip. The walls were lined with framed articles, features on my e-commerce empire, nods to my strategic brilliance. Donald had loved to tell people he had helped me turn my little hobby into a real business. The reality? My business had tripled in value since our wedding. I sat down at my desk, pulling up the legal folder I'd tucked away months ago. I had learned early in life that power doesn't come from trust, it comes from control. And control meant paperwork. Click. The folder opened, revealing the signed agreement Donald had long forgotten about. The one that stated, in no uncertain terms, that while the deed might have his name, the funding every single cent had come from my business. A business that was incorporated separately, legally untouchable in a divorce settlement. The house was a corporate asset, and Donald, he was a squatter. I smiled. Then I pulled up the security camera feed from the lake house. Another precaution he hadn't known about. The cameras had captured everything: every visit, every overnight stay, every betrayal. Amber might be basking in her little victory now, parading around my home and my things, but she had no idea she was starring in a video that would feature prominently in my divorce proceedings. A new email notification popped up from Rachel, my assistant. I clicked it open. Julia, you need to see this. Attached was a link to Amber's Instagram profile. I clicked. There, staring back at me, was Amber, sitting on my patio, drinking from my wine glasses, flashing a massive diamond ring. My grandmother's ring. The same ring Donald and I had agreed to save for Emma's 18th birthday. My vision went red. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just betrayal. This was a theft, and they thought they'd won. I let out a slow breath, forcing the anger into something more productive. Cold, sharp. I clicked open my banking app, and that's when the second blow landed. The joint account. The one we had set up for Emma's college fund. Empty, nearly $100,000 gone, transferred out yesterday, to an account I didn't recognize. The rage I had felt before? It was nothing compared to this. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer. She picked up on the second ring. Sarah, I said, my voice eerily calm. It's time. Sarah's voice was sharp and awake, even though it wasn't even 8 a.m. yet. Tell me everything. I exhaled slowly, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Donald drained Emma's college fund. 100 grand. Gone. Transferred to an account I don't recognize. There was a beat of silence. Then, a dangerous edge crept into Sarah's voice. That son of a... I want it back. My voice was steel. And I want him ruined. Say no more. I heard her typing in the background. We'll start by freezing his access to any remaining joint assets. Then, we'll track where that money went. I could already picture Donald, smug and untouchable, sipping expensive whiskey in my house, with my stolen money, his new plaything draped over him like a cheap accessory. He probably thought he had won. He had no idea he'd just declared war on the wrong woman. I set Emma down in her playpen and moved to my laptop, adrenaline keeping my hands steady. Time to dissect my soon-to-be ex-husband's world, piece by piece. The first step? Cutting him off at the knees. Sarah moved fast. Within the hour, she had filed an emergency injunction to freeze our joint accounts and had begun tracing the missing funds. Rachel, my assistant, wasn't far behind. She had already compiled every transaction Donald had made in the past 6 months. Her email subject line read, "You're going to love this." I opened the document, my pulse hammering. Donald hadn't just drained the college fund, he had been systematically funneling money into offshore accounts for months. The arrogance of it all was staggering. He really thought I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't fight back? There was something else, though. One transfer, marked just 3 weeks ago, $25,000 wire transfer to Amber Delacroix. A gift, no doubt. A down payment for her services as the perfect little mistress. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. He was paying her with our daughter's future. With the money I had worked for. With the life I had built from the ground up. He wanted a war? He'd get one. I dialed Rachel. She picked up on the first ring. Pull everything you can on Amber Delacroix. You're gonna love this too, Rachel said, a smug grin in her voice. She's not just some random 20-something gold digger. She's the CEO's niece. I froze. The CEO of Donald's company? The very same. Rachel let that sink in before adding, I dug into her socials. Amber has been bragging about a life-changing career opportunity for months. I think our dear Donald wasn't just sleeping with her. He was using her as a stepping stone to get a promotion. Of course he was. Donald never did anything without an ulterior motive. And now? He was months away from becoming CFO. It clicked together all at once. Donald hadn't just been planning to leave me, he had been strategically maneuvering to destroy me. To take my business down, steal my assets, and set himself up in a cushy new life with Amber and my stolen money. I took a deep breath, my mind already calculating. If he thought he could steal from me, betray me, and come out unscathed, he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I spent the next few hours securing everything. My accounts? Locked down. The lake house? Under legal dispute. My business? Untouched, thanks to the ironclad contracts I had drawn up years ago, contracts Donald had never bothered to read. Rachel and Sarah worked in tandem, gathering every piece of dirt we could use. I didn't just want to win. I wanted to bury him. By early afternoon, Sarah called me back. I found something, she said, her voice almost breathless. Something big. I sat up straighter. Tell me. Donald didn't just move your money around, she said. He's been trying to access your business servers. A sharp chill ran through me. What? Rachel cut in. We checked the network logs. He's been trying to get into your company's financials, probably to sabotage you before he leaves. The rage inside me crystallized into something deadly cold. He wasn't just trying to leave. He was trying to burn my business down on his way out. He wanted everything. My stomach curled with fury. I wasn't just taking back my money. I was going to destroy his entire future. The next step was simple. I drafted an email to the board of directors at Donald's company. Every single one of them. Subject: urgent. Donald Price involved in corporate espionage and fraud first. Attached all the evidence: his unauthorized access attempts, his wire transfers, his connection to Amber, and the fact that he was trying to dismantle a competitor from the inside. And then, just for fun, I CC'd Donald himself. I hit send. Then I sat back, picked up Emma, and kissed the top of her tiny head. Let's see how well Daddy likes losing everything. It didn't take long for the fireworks to start. By 6 p.m., my inbox exploded. First, a response from the CEO himself. Julia, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We are launching an immediate internal review. I'll be in touch soon. Then, a flood of panicked messages from Donald. Jules. What the hell did you do? You're making a mistake. We can talk about this. I didn't respond. I waited. And at exactly 8:32 p.m., a final email landed in my inbox. Donald had been terminated. Not just fired, blacklisted. The company was pressing charges for corporate espionage, and legal action was already underway. The CEO himself had denounced him. And Amber? She was about to be exposed too. I closed my laptop and let out a slow, satisfied breath. This was only the beginning. Donald had spent months planning his betrayal, but I had years of preparation behind me. And by the time I was finished, he wouldn't just lose the house, he'd lose everything. Donald called me at 11:42 p.m. I watched his name flash on my screen, his number now labeled simply as lying bastard. I let it ring. The second call came a minute later, then a third. By the fourth, I answered. You destroyed my career, he spat, his voice somewhere between rage and desperation. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. Oh, Donald, I said sweetly. You did that all by yourself. You think you've won? He snarled. You think you can just do this to me? I kept my voice calm, controlled. I didn't do anything except show people exactly who you are. His breath was heavy on the other end. He wanted to scream, but he knew I was holding all the cards now. He had lost his job. His name was being dragged through every corporate circle in the city. By morning, the press would know. And Amber? Well, I had a little something planned for her too. You think this is over? He growled. I exhaled a soft laugh. Oh, Donald, I whispered. I'm just getting started. And then I hung up. By 7 a.m. the next morning, the news had broken. Rachel's text popped up on my phone before I even had a chance to check myself. Check the financial news. He's done. I tapped open the latest headlines. Disgraced executive Donald Price fired amid corporate espionage scandal. Oh, this was delicious. The article laid it all out. His unauthorized access to corporate systems, his ties to Amber, his backdoor dealings to leak competitor information, my company's information. The board had cut ties immediately, terminating him with cause. And worse, the company was filing charges. I imagined Donald waking up to that headline. I imagined the cold sweat breaking across his skin as he realized this wasn't just a bad day. This was the end. He'd never work in finance again. His name was toxic, his reputation obliterated, and yet I wasn't done. Amber was next. I had spent the night combing through everything, every piece of information, every social media post, every trace of arrogance she had left scattered across the internet, and it led me straight to the final nail in her coffin. A fake charity. Amber Delacroix had been using her family name to solicit donations for a so-called philanthropic initiative, a fund that was supposed to support young entrepreneurs. The only problem? Not a single dollar had gone to anyone but Amber herself. I compiled everything. Emails showing the money trails, bank transfers linking the funds directly to her personal accounts. And then, With the careful precision of a surgeon, I sent the file to every major news outlet in the city. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. By noon, Amber's world was crumbling. Her uncle, the CEO of Donald's former company, was forced to issue a public statement disavowing her actions. The police were already investigating the fraud, and her so-called luxury lifestyle was rapidly turning into a legal nightmare. And the cherry on top? The luxury apartment Donald had secured for her? The one he had secretly used my money to put a down payment on? It was seized. Turns out, funds stolen from a child's college account tend to raise some legal concerns. Amber was out, penniless, disgraced, abandoned. She had no job, no place to live, and no sugar daddy to save her now. I closed my laptop with a satisfying click and smiled to myself. Good. But there was one last thing left to handle: the lake house. I had spent the last few days setting everything in motion. The legal dispute was ironclad. Donald couldn't claim a house that had been paid for entirely by my business. The law was on my side. But I wasn't just going to win the house back, I was going to make him suffer on his way out. That afternoon, I drove down there myself. By the time I arrived, the eviction notice was already posted on the front door. Donald was inside. I could hear him yelling over the phone, probably to whatever miserable lawyer he had managed to scrape together in the wake of his downfall. I knocked. The door swung open violently, and there he was, disheveled, sleepless, desperate. "This is my house," he snapped. "No," I said smoothly, stepping past him. "It was my house, and now it's going back where it belongs." He was seething. "You can't do this." I turned, leveling him with a look that sent ice through his spine. "You did this to yourself, Donald." He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but then his phone buzzed. His eyes flickered to the screen, and I saw the exact moment his face collapsed. His accounts? Frozen? His assets? Seized. His future? Gone. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice to a whisper. "I want you to remember this moment," I murmured. "I want you to remember that you lost everything because you underestimated me." Donald staggered back, his breath shaky. He looked around wildly, as if searching for an escape, for some last-ditch effort to salvage his ruined life. There was none. I turned on my heel and walked away, my heels clicking against the wooden floor of my house. "Julia!" he called after me, his voice ragged. "Please!" I paused in the doorway, just long enough to deliver the final blow. "Enjoy your new reality, Donald," I said softly. "I hear rock bottom is lovely this time of year." And with that, I walked out, leaving him standing alone in the ruins of his own destruction. By nightfall, I was back home, curled up with Emma as she drifted off to sleep. The war was over. I had won. Donald's life was in shambles. His career? Over. His finances? Decimated. His mistress? Exposed. And me? I was free. I glanced over at the framed email on my desk, the one Donald had sent me that started all of this. Moving on. I smiled to myself, brushing a soft curl from Emma's forehead as she snuggled closer. Oh, I had moved on. All right. But Donald? He'd spend the rest of his miserable life regretting the day he ever thought he could cross me. The quiet was unsettling. For months, my life had been chaos strategizing, executing, dismantling the man who thought he could steal from me and walk away unscathed. But now, the war was over. Donald was done. Yet, a part of me wasn't ready to exhale just yet. I sipped my coffee, the early morning light spilling through my kitchen window, casting a golden hue over Emma's chubby cheeks as she napped in her high chair. Peaceful, safe. She was the reason I had fought so hard. Then my phone vibrated against the marble countertop. Unknown number. I already knew who it was before I answered. Jules. His voice was barely a whisper. A rush of satisfaction coursed through me. "Donald, please," he croaked. "I need your help." I laughed, a quiet, almost disbelieving sound. This man. The audacity. "You need my help?" I mused, swirling my coffee lazily. "Now that's rich. I have nothing left," he confessed. "They froze everything. The offshore accounts, my savings Amber left. He choked on the words. "I'm being evicted. I don't have anywhere to go." His voice was thick with desperation, the kind of raw panic that only sets in when a man realizes he's lost every single card in his hand. It should have satisfied me, but instead, I felt nothing, just an eerie kind of detachment. He did this to himself. Should have thought about that before you emptied our daughter's college fund, Donald. A silence stretched between us. Then, his voice hardened. You always had to be the smart one, didn't you? Always had to win. I smiled, but there was no humor in it. And you always had to take. Always had to destroy things that weren't yours. You don't understand, he hissed. They're coming after me. The company, the SEC, even the IRS is looking into my finances. I could go to jail. Oh, I murmured, feigning concern. That does sound serious. I don't have anyone else, he admitted, his voice cracking. Please, Julia. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tapping against my mug. I thought about all the nights I had spent, unaware of his betrayal, the stolen money, the years of underestimation, the way he had paraded Amber around my home, spending my money, thinking he could replace me like I was a disposable asset in his pathetic little empire. And now, he was nothing. And I was still standing. I leaned forward, my voice cold as ice. Donald, listen to me very carefully. I let the silence drag, just enough to make his breath hitch on the other end. I am not your savior. I am your executioner. You will lose everything. You will suffer. And when you finally hit rock bottom, when you are gasping for air in the pit you dug for yourself, you will remember that I was the one who buried you there. A sharp inhale, a ragged exhale. Good. Julia, click. I set my phone down and took another sip of coffee. Let him rot. A week later, I was in my attorney's office, finalizing the last of the financial paperwork. Sarah handed me a folder. It's done. The courts officially transferred ownership of the lake house back to you. I let out a slow breath. Mine. Donald fought it, of course, she added, flipping through some documents. But considering he was broke, unemployed, and facing fraud charges, the judge didn't exactly take him seriously. I smiled, closing the folder. Good. Rachel had been the one to deliver the final humiliation. She had pulled a few strings with a friend in real estate, listing the lake house as a luxury rental property for high-profile clientele. The best part? Donald's old corporate rivals would be vacationing there, sipping champagne on the deck where he once stood, thinking he had won. And as for Amber, last I heard, she had tried to cozy up to another executive, but the scandal had burned her beyond repair. No one wanted to touch her anymore, not professionally, not socially. Game over. 3 weeks later, a headline caught my attention. Former CFO candidate arrested for wire fraud. I clicked the article. There he was, Donald Price, in handcuffs. The SEC had concluded its investigation. The offshore accounts? Illegal. The stolen business information? Criminal. He was being charged with fraud, corporate espionage, and money laundering. He was looking at years in federal prison. I stared at his mugshot, barely recognizing the man I had once called my husband. He looked wrecked, gaunt, defeated. The mighty had fallen, and I had been the one to push him off the ledge. That evening, I sat on the deck of the lake house, the warm summer air wrapping around me as Emma played on a blanket beside me. I watched the water ripple under the moonlight, peaceful, untouched by the chaos that had once consumed my life. This was mine, my home, my daughter's future. I picked up my glass of wine and glanced toward my phone, where Donald's last message sat unread. I hope you're happy, I smirked, lifting my glass in a silent toast. Oh, Donald, you have no idea. I never expected the final blow to come so soon. Donald was rotting in jail. Amber was exiled from high society. And my life was finally my own. And yet, I knew men like Donald never went down without one last, desperate swing. I was brushing Emma's soft curls after her bath when my phone buzzed. An email notification. From Donald's lawyer. Subject, custody motion filed. The air left my lungs. My fingers clenched around the phone so tightly, I thought the glass might crack. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But there it was in black and white. Donald was suing for joint custody of Emma. My blood ran cold. This wasn't about her. This wasn't about love or fatherhood or making amends. This was his last power move. A man with nothing left will do anything to pretend he's still in control. I set the phone down, pressing a slow, steady kiss to Emma's forehead as she sleepily mumbled against my shoulder. My heart ached with love for her, a love Donald would never be capable of understanding. He wanted a war? Fine, I would end him. Sarah was already working the next morning. This is laughable, she scoffed, flipping through the legal papers. The man is incarcerated. He has no job, no assets, and his criminal record now includes wire fraud and corporate espionage. But he has a lawyer, I murmured, scanning the signature at the bottom of the document. Sarah followed my gaze and her expression darkened. Vincent Holloway. The name made my skin crawl. Vincent was one of those attorneys, the kind who took cases not because he believed in justice, but because he loved to make people bleed. He's good, Sarah admitted, grudgingly. But he doesn't take cases he knows he'll lose. I met her gaze, my mind already turning. Then what does he think he has on me? Rachel's text came through an hour later. Found it. Donald's play. Call me ASAP, the moment Rachel answered. I knew it was bad. He's trying to claim you're unfit, she said without preamble, citing your unstable emotional state during the divorce, your questionable business dealings. Oh, and get this. He's saying you had an affair. I burst out laughing. A short, sharp sound that had nothing to do with humor. An affair? With Sarah. I blinked. My lawyer? Rachel snorted. Apparently, you and Sarah have been conspiring together for years to, she paused dramatically, financially ruin your husband while engaging in a secret romantic relationship. Sarah, sitting across from me, looked up from her coffee. Oh, so we're dating now? You could at least buy me dinner first. I shook my head, my amusement vanishing as quickly as it came. What's the real angle? Rachel's voice turned serious. Vincent Holloway is building a narrative. That you manipulated the courts. That you weaponized your money and influence to erase Donald from Emma's life. He's painting you as a vindictive ex-wife who's using her wealth to keep a father away from his child. I inhaled sharply. This was bad. Not because there was any truth to it, but because men like Vincent didn't need truth. They just needed doubt, and doubt could sway a judge. The next few days passed in a blur of strategy meetings and legal filings. We weren't just defending anymore, we were attacking. Sarah had unearthed everything. Emails, texts, financial records, every last piece of evidence that painted Donald not just as a terrible husband, but as an actively dangerous influence on Emma's life. The drugs, the secret gambling debts, the non-disclosed psychiatric evaluations from his former company, citing his inability to regulate his emotions under stress. He wanted to paint me as unstable? Fine. Let's talk about the time he punched a hole in the wall when I was 8 months pregnant. He wanted to claim I was manipulative? Let's bring up his fraudulent business dealings, the embezzlement attempts, the lies he spun like silk. By the time we were done, the only thing Donald would be getting custody of was a prison jumpsuit. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. Donald looked worse than I'd ever seen him thinner. His skin sallow, his once expensive suit now wrinkled and ill-fitted. He glared at me as I took my seat, his hands clenched into fists. He thought I would be afraid of him. He was wrong. Vincent Holloway was a smooth talker. I'd give him that. He painted a picture of a poor, wronged father, a man whose only crime was trusting his manipulative, vengeful wife. He spoke of wealth disparity, of power imbalance, of a father's right to be in his child's life. He almost sounded convincing. And then it was my turn. Sarah took her time dismantling every single lie. She called witnesses, financial experts, former colleagues of Donald's, even a former mistress of his who revealed he had bragged about using Amber to climb the corporate ladder. But it was the video footage that sealed his fate. Rachel had managed to pull an old security tape from our home, a recording of the night. Donald lost control. There he was, screaming at me, red-faced, spittle flying from his lips. A chair slammed into the wall. A glass shattered. My pregnant belly visible beneath a thin nightgown. The courtroom was silent. The judge's expression hardened. Vincent Holloway stopped taking notes. Donald knew, in that moment, it was over. The ruling came swiftly. Full custody granted to me. Supervised visitation, only if Donald completed extensive therapy and rehabilitation. It was a polite way of saying, he will never see Emma again. I felt his eyes on me as the courtroom emptied. He didn't say a word, but I saw the defeat in his posture. He was done. And I walked out with my head held high, my daughter's future safe. The war was finally over, and I had won. The echoes of the judge's gavel still rang in my ears as I stepped outside the courthouse, the final ruling lingering in the air like a long overdue storm breaking. Full custody granted. Donald was finished. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for months, maybe even years, had finally lifted. Emma was safe. My life was mine again. And yet, as I stood on the courthouse steps, staring at the bleak gray sky, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Because men like Donald didn't just fade into obscurity. They festered. And I had spent too many years underestimating his capacity for destruction to believe he would accept this loss quietly. I was right. It started that night. Rachel was the first to notice. I had just put Emma to sleep, curling up on my couch with a well-earned glass of wine when my phone buzzed. Rachel's message was simple, clipped, urgent. Check your email. Now. I frowned, setting my glass down and pulling up my inbox. A new email sat at the top, marked urgent. The sender's name sent a shiver down my spine. Donald Price. I exhaled slowly, my pulse steady but quickening. I clicked. You think you won, Julia? You have no idea what you've started. You took my job, my reputation, my child, and you expect me to just take it? You've turned everyone against me. You think you're untouchable, but I promise you, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. I stared at the words, my skin prickling with something cold, not fear. Not even anger. Just calculation. I had been waiting for this. And now it was time to end it. Sarah wasn't surprised when I forwarded her the email. He's unraveling, she said the next morning, flipping through a fresh set of legal documents. Desperate men make sloppy mistakes. What's the move? I asked, my voice steady, my mind already turning. We document everything. We file a formal harassment complaint. We add a restraining order to the custody case. And, she tapped the folder in front of her, we go after what little he has left. I raised a brow. Which is? Sarah's lips curled into a small, knowing smile, the last of his liquid assets. Donald had been bleeding money for months. The legal fees, the fraud case, the complete destruction of his professional reputation. He was drowning. And I was about to press my foot on his neck. Rachel was the one who delivered the final nail in Donald's coffin. She had been watching him, tracking every move, every desperate attempt to claw his way out of the pit he had dug for himself. And then she found it. A fraudulent insurance claim. Donald, in a last-ditch effort to recover financially, had filed a claim on the lake house, the house he no longer owned. He claimed storm damage, Rachel said, sliding the documents across my desk. Falsified repair estimates, fake invoices, the whole 9 yards. My breath caught for half a second before I let out a slow, amused exhale. Rachel, I murmured, picking up the papers. Do you know what this means? She grinned. That we can report him for insurance fraud? I met her gaze, my smile sharpening. Oh, it means so much more than that. The arrest happened 2 weeks later. Donald had no idea what was coming. He was too busy fighting his legal battles, too distracted trying to spin his pathetic sob story to anyone who would listen. So when the authorities showed up at his cheap motel, flashing a warrant for felony insurance fraud, I could only imagine the look on his face. It made the months of suffering worth it. Rachel sent me the article the moment it went live. Former executive, Donald Price, arrested amidst growing financial scandal. The photo was even better: Donald, handcuffed, looking like a man who had finally run out of road. The media went wild. His fraud case had already made headlines. But this was catastrophic. A convicted felon, a fraudster, a man who had lost everything and still managed to dig deeper. And just like that, the last ember of his former life was snuffed out. That night, I stood on the deck of the lake house, staring out over the water, the cool breeze wrapping around me. Emma slept peacefully inside, safe, loved, protected. I lifted my wine glass, watching the way the moonlight reflected off the dark ripples below. Donald had spent years taking from me. He had taken my trust, my time, my patience. He had stolen from me, betrayed me, tried to rip my life apart piece by piece. And now he had nothing. On the other hand, I had everything. I had my daughter, my business, my future. I had peace. I took a slow sip of wine, savoring the victory, the justice, the absolute finality of it all. And as I set the glass down, staring out at the home I had fought so hard to reclaim, I let the last remnants of Donald Price fade into the past. He had tried to destroy me. Instead, he had only made me stronger. And in the end, I won. The past has a way of trying to crawl back when you least expect it, even when you've buried it, even when you've burned it to the ground. I thought Donald was finished. But men like him never know when to stay dead. It was a quiet afternoon when the email arrived. No subject line, no sender name, just an anonymous, masked address. I might have ignored it, but curiosity won out. I clicked. You took everything from me. But you don't get to just walk away, Julia. I exhaled through my nose, my fingers tightening around my phone. This isn't over. A different woman, a weaker woman, might have felt fear coil in her stomach, might have let her mind race through worst-case scenarios, but I had spent too long being afraid. And I had learned that when the past knocks, you don't open the door. You bolt it shut. I tapped the message, hit forward, and sent it straight to Sarah. Within minutes, my phone rang. Sarah's voice was cold, controlled. He's grasping at straws. He's in jail, I murmured, my eyes drifting to the email again. How the hell is he even sending this? Prisons aren't airtight, she replied. He could have someone on the outside helping him. Or he's found a way to communicate from the inside. I let out a slow breath, weighing my options. I had already destroyed him financially, legally, professionally. But this was a cockroach refusing to die. Sarah spoke again. Want me to escalate this? We can file an additional harassment complaint. Maybe restrict his communication privileges. No. I rolled my shoulders back, my voice steady. I want to know who's helping him. Rachel had an answer within 24 hours. I was sipping coffee when she called, her voice edged with restrained excitement. Amber. The name made me pause, the taste of bitterness thick on my tongue. I almost laughed. Almost. You're kidding, I said, setting my mug down. Oh, I wish. I could hear the smirk in Rachel's voice. She's been visiting him. Regularly. She's the one sending his messages. Of course she was. Amber had lost everything. Her reputation, her family's name, her carefully cultivated high society image. And yet, she still clung to him. To Donald. I shook my head slowly, almost in admiration at the sheer idiocy of it all. Rachel continued. She's been trying to appeal his sentence. Quietly, behind the scenes, pulling strings, calling in favors. She's convinced she can get him out early. My fingers tapped against the table. Not if I have anything to say about it. Sarah filed the request within the week, a formal complaint to the parole board. It was simple. Donald Price was not a man who had learned his lesson. He had not shown remorse. He had not accepted responsibility. He was actively engaging in harassment, manipulating outside contacts to continue his petty war. And criminals like him? They did not deserve leniency. The hearing was held 3 weeks later. Donald never even saw it coming. He walked into that room thinking he had a shot, thinking that Amber's remaining connections, her desperate last-ditch efforts, would somehow erase everything he had done. He left in handcuffs, his parole denied, his sentence extended. And Amber? She was there, waiting for him, sitting in the back of the courtroom. I watched her expression morph from stubborn determination to pure, unfiltered devastation as the reality hit her. Donald wasn't getting out. Not now. Not for a long time. I caught her eye as I stood, slinging my bag over my shoulder. She held my gaze, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something. To beg, maybe. To demand an explanation as if I owed her one. I didn't. I simply smiled and walked away. That night, I stood on the balcony of my lake house, breathing in the crisp evening air. Emma slept peacefully inside, her tiny breaths even and steady. Donald was rotting. Amber was drowning. And me? I was free. The past had tried to claw its way back, but I had buried it for good. Some ghosts refused to stay buried. It had been months since Donald's parole was denied, since I had watched Amber's last shred of hope crumble before my eyes, since I had stood on the deck of my lake house, looking out over the water, feeling the final weight lift from my chest. I had thought that was the end. I was wrong. The past always has one last whisper left in it. It started with a phone call, unknown number. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering, my voice steady. Julia Price. A pause. Then, a voice I hadn't expected. Miss Price, this is Warden Calloway from Oak Ridge Correctional Facility. I think you should come in. The air in the room stilled. Why? I asked, my grip tightening around the phone. Another pause. Because Donald Price has something to tell you. And I think you'll want to hear it. The prison was cold, sterile, a place where time itself felt frozen, trapped in endless repetition. I had sworn I'd never step foot here. That I was done with him. But the warden had been insistent. Donald had requested to see me. I wasn't afraid. Whatever he thought he could say to rattle me, he was already a ghost in my world. But I was curious. I walked into the meeting room, my heels clicking against the tile floor. Donald sat on the other side of the glass partition, the phone waiting in its cradle. His face was thinner, his once meticulously styled hair now overgrown and dull. His orange jumpsuit hung loosely on him. He looked like a man who had been eaten alive by his own choices. I sat down, picked up the phone. He did the same. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything that had passed between us sat heavy in the air. Then, finally, he exhaled a slow, shaky breath. You really hate me, don't you? His voice was rough, cracked from months of silence. I tilted my head slightly. Hate takes energy, Donald, and you're not worth mine. Something flickered in his eyes. Regret? No. Men like him didn't feel regret. Just loss. The loss of power, of control. I didn't ask you here for apologies, he muttered, looking down at his hands. Not that you'd believe them anyway. You'd be right about that. He swallowed hard, then looked back up at me. I called you because I needed to warn you. I almost laughed. Warn me? The irony was almost too much. Amber's not done with you. The words should have meant nothing. But something in his expression made me pause. She's been making calls, he continued, reaching out to people, digging. She wants to take you down. I raised a brow, unimpressed. She tried that before. She failed. She's more desperate now. He leaned forward, his eyes burning with something that almost looked like sincerity. She lost everything, Julia, and now she blames you. She thinks. He hesitated. She thinks if she can destroy your business, your reputation, she'll get back what she lost. I studied him for a long moment. I had spent years unraveling Donald's lies, picking apart his manipulations, dismantling his ability to hold power over me. And yet, something in his voice told me this wasn't a trick. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. His lips pressed into a thin line. Because I know Amber. She won't stop until she's ruined you, or you ruin her first. I considered that. Then I gave him a small, humorless smile. Then I guess she's about to learn the same lesson you did. Rachel had already started digging before I even left the prison. Amber's been making quiet moves in the shadows, she told me over the phone. She's reaching out to old connections, trying to get investors to turn against you, spreading rumors about your company's financials. And? I asked, already knowing there was more. And she's looking for leverage. Rachel's voice was grim. Something to use against you. Amber was a fool. She had already lost. But she was also dangerous in her desperation. And desperate people made mistakes. I wasn't going to let her strike first. I was going to end this before it even started. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. Rachel had uncovered Amber's new scheme. She had been planning to launch a business venture using stolen proprietary data from my company. Theft, fraud, corporate espionage. A repeat offense. And this time, I was going to make sure she didn't walk away from it. Sarah filed the lawsuit first thing Monday morning. Not just a civil suit, a federal complaint. Amber was blindsided. Within days, her accounts were frozen. Her so-called investors vanished. And by the end of the month, she was arrested. Another mugshot. Another headline. Amber Delacroix, indicted for corporate espionage, facing up to 10 years. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee as I read the article, letting the finality of it sink in. She should have stayed buried. That night, I put Emma to bed, brushing a strand of hair from her peaceful face. For the first time in years, I felt it. Absolute, undeniable peace. Donald was locked away, his influence crushed under the weight of his own failures. Amber was finished, drowning in the consequences of her own greed. And me? I had survived. I had won. I walked onto my balcony, the lake stretching out before me, still and endless under the moonlight. For the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for the next battle. The war was over, and I was free. There's something poetic about the end of a war. Not the chaos, not the battles, but the silence that comes after. The quiet hum of finality settling over everything. Thick like a summer storm that has finally broken. Amber was gone. Donald was gone. Their legacies, their reputations, obliterated. And yet, I had learned something through all of this. Power is never truly taken. It is seized. It is maintained. It is protected. So when the past came knocking one last time, I was ready. It started with a letter. Not an email, not a phone call, a letter. Thick, expensive stationery, embossed with gold lettering, no return address, just a name I hadn't seen in years. Diana Price, Donald's mother. I exhaled slowly, sliding a finger under the envelope flap and unfolding the letter with careful hands. The last time Diana and I had spoken, she had been standing beside her son at our wedding, barely masking her disapproval. And now, she wanted a meeting, a private discussion. Just the two of us. I should have thrown the letter away. I should have ignored it. But something about it felt unfinished. So I set the letter down, reached for my phone, and sent a single text to Sarah. Find out everything you can. Diana had chosen neutral ground, a high-end restaurant tucked in a quiet corner of the city. The kind of place where people pretended not to eavesdrop, where money spoke louder than words. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table near the window, her expression unreadable. I slid into the seat across from her, meeting her gaze with steady eyes. Diana, Julia. Her voice was as smooth as ever, years of practiced politeness masking whatever storm was brewing beneath. Thank you for coming. I didn't bother with pleasantries. Why am I here? She studied me, fingers lightly tapping against the stem of her wine glass. Because I think we can help each other. I let out a quiet laugh, leaning back in my chair. Help? That's rich, coming from you. Her expression didn't waver. I know what my son did. I know he was reckless, foolish. But the world moves quickly, Julia, and power shifts just as fast. You may think you've won, but you and I both know, victory is never permanent. I tilted my head slightly. Are you threatening me, Diana? I'm offering you an opportunity. Her voice was measured, her confidence unwavering. Donald is gone. Amber is gone. But there are still people who hold influence in this city, people who are watching. People who are waiting for the moment you slip. I held her gaze, unblinking. And let me guess you just so happen to have a way to ensure that never happens? She smiled. You built something remarkable, Julia. You took everything from my son, and I respect that, truly. But power. She paused, swirling the wine in her glass. Power is fragile, and if you're not careful, someone will come along and take it from you next. I sat there for a long moment, letting her words settle. Diana Price was no fool. She had spent decades building influence, shaping reputations, pulling strings from behind closed doors, and she thought she could control me. I leaned in slightly, my voice calm, quiet. Let me make one thing clear, Diana. You're right, power is fragile, but I am not. Her fingers tightened around the glass. I smiled. Donald thought he could take from me and get away with it. Amber thought the same. Do you know where they are now? Silence. You came here thinking you could intimidate me, that you could remind me of the way this world works. But let me tell you something, you and your kind. You're relics of a dying era. The rules are changing, and I am not a woman you can manipulate. Diana's jaw tensed. For the first time, something flickered in her gaze, something dangerously close to doubt. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the table toward her. That's for you. She didn't touch it. What is this? Consider it an act of goodwill, I said lightly. Inside, you'll find a list of names. People who, up until recently, were quite happy to be in your social circle. People who, as of today, have severed all ties with you. Diana's fingers twitched slightly. You've spent years building your network, Diana. But networks require trust. And unfortunately for you, yours has been compromised. I sat back, tilting my head. You see, people don't like being associated with losers. And after what happened with Donald? Well, let's just say your family name isn't worth much anymore. She picked up the envelope slowly, as if it might burn her. Enjoy your dinner, I said smoothly, standing up. And don't contact me again. I turned and walked away, leaving Diana Price sitting alone in the ruins of the power she once thought was untouchable. That night, I stood by the window of my home, looking out at the quiet city lights below. Sarah's text came through just as I finished pouring my wine. Diana's scrambling, words spreading fast. She just lost her board seat at the foundation. I smiled, taking a slow sip. Diana Price had spent a lifetime weaving an empire of influence, and in a single night, I had unraveled it. Power isn't given, it's taken. And I had taken everything.